During the state funeral of President Jimmy Carter, CNN's cameras caught a brief but tense and I hope iconic moment between President Biden and Donald Trump as Biden was eulogizing Carter and taking the time to preach against the dangers of abusing power. He stared Trump down and Trump visibly reacted, and it was all on camera. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, this, I hope, will be a viral mic drop moment. It's a poignant moment. It's an incredibly powerful moment. And I think President Carter, who was an outspoken critic of Donald Trump, would approve posthumously. As you know, Carter died recently at age 100. He was the 39th president of the United States, a statesman and a humanitarian par excellence, just truly an amazing figure, particularly after he left office. He kind of set the standard that Donald Trump will never reach for post-presidency. President Biden eulogized President Carter at the state funeral, and this moment occurred. We're going to play this clip, and then we'll play a longer segment because what the president had to say was really powerful and really poignant. But here's what CNN's cameras caught.
You know, we have an obligation to give hate no safe harbor and to stand up to what my dad used to say is the greatest sin of all, the abuse of power. That's not about being perfect, because none of us are perfect. We're all fallible, but it's about...
So he stares off to his right, and the cameras see this. It's Donald Trump who reacts. President Biden doesn't mention Trump by name, but Trump is obviously the only person in the room to whom that particular warning would most specifically apply. And you can see Trump almost see it as like he reels. He's like, really? And raises his chin. He pays attention. Even Trump recognizes that that was a shot across the bow. Now, again, I want to play a longer segment of this. The full thing is about 12 minutes long. We're not going to listen or watch to the full eulogy. But this particular segment is really powerful and really poignant. And it begins with President Biden talking about how he was among the first elected officials to endorse President Carter.
That day, just the four of us sat in the living room and shared memories that spanned almost 6 decades. A deep friendship that started in 1974. I was a 31-year-old senator, and I was the first senator outside of Georgia, maybe the first senator, to endorse his candidacy for president. It was an endorsement based on what I believe is Jimmy Carter's enduring attribute: character, character, character. Because of that character, I believe, is destiny. Destiny in our lives, and quite frankly, destiny in the life of the nation. It's an accumulation of a million things built on character that leads to a good life in a decent country. Life of purpose, life of meaning. Now, how do we find that good life? What does it look like? What does it take to build character? Do the ends justify the means? Jimmy Carter's friendship taught me, and through his life taught me, the strength of character is more than title or the power we hold. It's the strength to understand that everyone should be treated with dignity, respect, that everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves an even shot. Not a guarantee, but just a shot. You know, we have an obligation to give hate no safe harbor and to stand up to what my dad used to say is the greatest sin of all, the abuse of power. That's not about being perfect, because none of us are perfect. We're all fallible. But it's about asking ourselves, are we striving to do things, the right things? What values? What are the values that animate our spirit?
Just a really powerful, poignant part of the speech. And again, multiple times looking in Trump's direction. Very powerful stuff. This is again what I hope is a mic drop moment for President Biden as he ends his political career, as he ends his presidency. And again, President Carter himself was an outspoken public critic of Donald Trump. I mean, actually, quite frankly, President Carter had a reputation for being a bit critical of many of his successors, but nobody quite so much as Donald Trump. And while we're on the topic, I also want to share this moment of another subtle moment of disrespect to Donald Trump coming from Mike Pence's wife, Karen Pence, mother, as Mike Pence refers to her. This is Donald Trump entering the cathedral, shaking hands with Mike Pence for the first time, I believe. This is the first time they've been in direct contact since 2021. And Karen Pence, Mike Pence's wife, doesn't stand up, does not greet Trump or even Melania.
Leland, good morning to you. We can see President-elect Trump now entering the room for this morning's service.
Al Gore, Mike Pence there with former President Trump. I'm not sure former Vice President Pence and Donald Trump have seen each other since.
She doesn't stand up. She doesn't go for the handshake. She doesn't acknowledge Trump or Melania at all. Looks away and only looks back ahead after they've passed. I love it. I love to see shade either when it's subtle or massive, because Donald Trump, quite frankly, deserves it. Getting back to President Biden, he also did his final, I think it will be his final, the final interview of his presidency with USA Today. And the topic of abuse of power, and in particular Donald Trump's abuse of power, came up. So this seems to be something that's on President Biden's mind, and appropriately so. I want to read you this excerpt from the woman who conducting the interview. She says, "Mr. President, your term is not over yet. You're still doing things every day. Some of your supporters have encouraged you to issue preemptive pardons to people like Liz Cheney and Anthony Fauci, who Trump has threatened to target. Will you do that?" He says, "Well, a little bit of it depends on who he puts in what positions." That's key, and we'll come back to it. If in fact here's how, I was very straightforward with Trump when he got elected. I invited him immediately to the White House. I spent 2 hours with him. He was very complimentary with some of the economic things I'd done. And by the way, a lot of people are like, surely not. I actually believe this. Here's the thing about Trump. Trump is thin-skinned. He's narcissistic, but we've seen him flip-flop on President Carter. We've seen him. He has actually complimented Joe Biden in the past and then insulted him the next moment. Same thing with Vice President Harris and President Obama and others as well. This is not out of the ordinary. Donald Trump just says shit in the moment when he thinks it's convenient for him. He's not particularly consistent. So we'll continue. And he talked about, he thought I was leaving with a good record kind of thing. I tried to make it clear that there was no need, and it was counterintuitive for his interest to try to go back and settle scores. The interviewer said, "And did he give you an answer on what he was going to do?" President Biden said, "Well, he didn't. But he didn't say, no, I'm going to, He didn't reinforce it. He just basically listened." So, again, this is something that's clearly on the president's mind, and it should be. It should be on everybody's mind. As a matter of fact, many of us were a bit disappointed by how chummy President Biden appeared to be with Donald Trump post-election. I understand observing the peaceful transfer of power. I even, in theory, understand attending the inauguration, but the photographs standing beside each other, I don't like that personally. Biden's argument is, listen, in order for us to restore these institutional norms, we have to uphold them. Yes, but you should also demand reciprocity. And if you're not given reciprocity, then you should consider not proffering these gestures in the first place, because all it does is create a permission structure for Trump and MAGA Republicans to constantly disrespect not just you and Democrats and your voters and the American people, but also the institutions and the expectations, because they know that you will always reciprocate. Or you will rather always give them the benefit of the doubt. But I digress. But President Biden focused on, it depends on who Trump appoints. Well, a Democratic congressman really put this pretty well just the other day about Donald Trump's various nominees and how it signals that there will be a revenge tour under the Trump administration.
That we don't know the revenge tour that Donald Trump is about to go on. He is a dangerous man and a dangerous person as president. And as we think about the folks that he wants to put in charge of our agencies, Kash Patel, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, Christie Noam. I mean, these are people that have no business involved in any of our national security apparatus, and the very people that would be responsible in taking on other insurrectionists in the future. I think this is also a solemn and sad day for the country. I'm grateful that Kamala Harris and Democrats, that we followed our duty, allowed this election to be certified. Donald Trump won the election, but that doesn't mean that we should stand by and allow him to do whatever he wants to damage our institutions and our country.
100% agreed. I mean, again, just a very succinct case about how the nominees that Trump has proffered to key positions really do indicate that he is hell-bent on a revenge tour based on people whose only criteria is that they're loyal to him. They're not particularly competent. They're not particularly experienced. They're just really vengeful and really loyal to Trump. And that's incredibly dangerous when you give people like that enormous power. The one in particular that Representative Garcia mentioned, and that I think should be front of mind for everybody, is Kash Patel, right? And I want to play this clip because this is Ronnie Jackson, a deranged MAGA Republican congressman, having a conversation with deranged MAGA commentator Benny Johnson about what Kash Patel will do. And this is actually from either earlier today or late yesterday.
So you're going to be working with Kash.
Oh,
to find
Kash,
the
I love
actual
him.
truth. Yeah.
Kash is awesome. He's going to light that place on fire, man. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Hopefully not like Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, not like Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
yeah,
In a figurative sense, he's
That's
gonna eliminate the deep state in that organization, and I cannot wait.
Again, the deep state to Republicans are just people who disagree with them, who happen to hold government positions. Donald Trump was in charge, and the deep state was somehow present but not present. It was like Schrodinger's deep state. If the government did what Trump wanted, that's not the deep state. If there were people in government that either disagreed with Trump or were politically inconvenient for Trump, that is the deep state. So again, it's just a pure litmus test. And going back to it, this topic of the state funeral of President Carter, I also want to play this clip too, because earlier today, a Republican congressman, a Max Miller, tried to throw a performative tantrum about the lack of Democrats in the House of Representatives at the moment, and was shut down by a Democratic congressman who pointed out that Republicans are actually the reason why there weren't many Democrats on site, because of what they chose to schedule at what time.
Or the people of Israel. They need to call this what it is: anti-Semitism. That's what this is. That's what the ICC is going after, and that's what you're condoning from the gentleman of Massachusetts. And I see the support on the other side of the aisle with all your colleagues sitting next to you, fighting right alongside. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Two things, Mr. Speaker. To the gentleman who just spoke, the reason why my colleagues are not here is because the Republicans scheduled this debate during President Carter's funeral, which I find to be incredibly disappointing, given President Carter's stature in this country and his commitment to human rights.
Exactly. Yeah, that's typical Republicans for you. Elected Republicans, they play games. They take shots across the bow. They, use crises. They use tragedies, and they use mournful times to their political benefit. And then they try to extract further political reward out of it. So good on Representative McGovern for shutting that down, and good on President Biden for taking this time to do what I expect President Carter would appreciate, which is calling out abuses of power, even if it is directed in a very public and embarrassing way at Donald Trump. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.